Good afternoon, my Cracker Tugas. I'm MBT, and this is 20 Spirit Testing. The first event of the Moonrise season is this weekend. The Poison Nectar Monthly is happening Saturday, and for the first time ever, it will be cast live. To prepare this week, I'm going to give you the lowdown on a deck that's receiving Tearlament levels of hype because it's Tearlament. Presenting Blizzstrix. So here's the list from live event winner Ren. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. But first, if you've been compelled to casting by my videos, I've got great news for me! I've got an affiliate code in the Elestrals shop, so if you're picking up cardboard or plushies, please use that link down there. It helps the channel immensely. Now back to the video. With that, let's bring in Blizzstrix. If you're staring at this deck and experiencing deja vu, I don't blame you. This deck is built on the bones of one of my all-time favorite bad brews, Snowmen. By self-milling with Morfrost and Morolith, that deck summoned a single large man every turn. But that deck was only sort of playable in the Daybreak meta, so how can the incredibly fast gameplay from Moonrise improve it? Well, as you might have guessed, the answer lies in the deck's namesake, Blizzstrix. This Elestrals Ascension line, alongside Cedar Soar, has the ability to cast itself from the graveyard provided it's milled from the top of your deck. Thereby, by maxing out on cards that do that, you can hit for a ton of damage super fast. This lists a series of small synergies that surround a stellar game plan, so I won't waste any more of your time by getting into the deck list. First up, our things you want to mill. We have 2 copies of Cedar Soar, which when sent from the deck to the Underworld can be special cast, but in a miscast way, either Earth, or Frost, Frost. And then if it has its effect, you can expend a rune in order to search your deck for a 3-cost Elestral and add it to your hand, though admittedly this is for a card we're not playing. We want to be milling Asprowl, which if sent from the deck to the Underworld can be special cast on top of a Snowlet, and has the ability to expend a Frost to send the top 4 from your deck to the Underworld, or Blizzstrix, which if sent from your deck to the Underworld can special ascend on top of an Asprowl, and allows you to return 3 Elestrals from your Underworld to the bottom of your deck in order to destroy a card. This is a broken-ass ability, and kind of the reason that we are trying the deck at all. We are also playing some cards that enable the milling. Of course, we've got Morolith. Morolith is usually online in this deck, but it's not as guaranteed as when the deck was playing Morfrost, because then you could ensure you would always be able to cast a turn 1 Morolith. Here, it can be cast with Frost, Frost. Of course, if your opponent has fewer Elestrals in their Underworld than you do, then you mill 5. The ways that you set this up are Gloombat, which is a special cast if your opponent has 2 face-down runes or more. Usually they'll have exactly 2, which is exactly where you want to be. It's them playing around Hurricane, but failing to play around cards like Thunder Storm, so the sweet spot is hit by this card that puts itself in the graveyard for Morolith reasons. You can also mill off of Snowlet, which on receive can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the Underworld, or through Avalanche, which gets both players to mill the top 3. That's, of course, not a guarantee, but usually happens just because you are playing so many more Elestrals than anyone else. You can send an additional 2 cards from your deck to the Underworld if you do this after you cast a guy. So the best turn ones are usually like Snowlet, Avalanche, hit an Asprowl, hit a Blizzstrix, win the game. Because we are in Frost, we're also playing in Frostrix, which has the ability to reborn guys from the graveyard. You can, of course, only hit 1 Spirit Frost Elestrals, but there's a lot of really good ones. Snowlet, of course, is a mechanism by which you can continue milling. Catarant is a way that you can get your Frosts back in your Spirit deck, because this deck blazes through its Spirit deck. And Tadflow is kind of a jack of all trades. You can expend a Frost in order to special ascend this into an Elestral with enchantment cost Frost or Frost Frost from your hand, so it allows you to skip directly to an Asprowl if your hand is really bricky. You can bring it back with an Frostrix and unbrick yourself. A lot of stuff this card does. Finally, we are playing 3 copies of No Stone Unturned, which searches your deck for a Golem Elestral, like this one. And, of course, we've got Ambrosia and Rise from the Ashes, and All-Star from Snowmen in here as well, alongside 2 Kione, which, of course, get really good if your graveyard is functionally just your deck. There's really no boy math going on. We've got 2 Teratlus. That's so we can cast a copy of No Stone Unturned. Theoretically, you can cast a Cedar Soar with these, and you could board into an Earthquake as well. 2 Lycoris. That's because our Blizzstrix needs a Wind Spirit in order to actually activate its effect. You are usually going to ascend that on top of one of your 2 drops, something like an Asprowl or a Morolith or a Cedar Soar that's been enchanted with Frost Frost. A billion Frost, and then 1 Owloon for the singleton Gloombat. You could maybe go up to 2 to facilitate some silly guys out of the extra, or maybe Gloombat twice. So with that, let's jump into a game. Our match is up against this Dense Fog deck, which I really love. We've got Swole playing across the table, so at least it's going to be good. You can see our hand is okay, but it kind of does demand the ability to get over an opponent's established setup. So what I'm going to do turn one is just expend. Get used to doing that. It's definitely a play that you're going to be performing a lot. So you can see we've got the Snowlet, we've got the Infrostrix, we've got the Blizzstrix, we've got a Morlith and a Gloombat. Any scenario where we can special summon that Gloombat, I'm going to feel good. And as we go Astrab at set 3, I'm realizing the time is fast approaching. Okay, so first and foremost, let's go ahead and do the Avalanche Rip as well. We're going to start with the Gloombat. We're going to Gloombat, just try and snipe something crazy. What we're looking to hit here is pretty much exactly a Gorgon's Gaze, because stopping the Morlith is a big problem. Unfortunately, we hit a PTA, but it becomes immediately clear they don't really have a Gorgon's Gaze for us. We're going to go for the Morlith. We're going to activate the Morlith effect here. We're going to mill 5, and thankfully it does connect. Let's see what we get off those top 5. They're not great. A Snowlet and then a bunch of Invoke Runes is not exactly where you want to be. But even having the Snowlet is enough, because this Infrostrix in hand means that we can reborn the Snowlet and then start milling some more. So we're going to do that. We will mill 3. And we find here a Blizzstrix, an Avalanche, and a Pulsar. Another pretty bad series of hits. We do have the Avalanche, so we can mill 5 here. Our opponent's going to mill 3. We get the 3, and thank goodness one of them is Asprowl. The additional 2 are very bad. But as you can see, these are like really low percentage mills. Like, this is not what you want to be milling, and still we're getting way ahead from this position. So now that the Asprowl is on field, we can go ahead and activate the Asprowl's effect and mill an additional guy to mill 4. We will do that, and there he is, Cedar Soar, exactly what we're looking for. After milling half our deck, we have finally found one. So we are going to go ahead and special cast that Cedar Soar. We're getting really low really quick, but of course our opponent's going to get really lower really quicker. And I think we're just about done for this turn. With 2 in the back row, unless one is Tsunami, then we are going to be able to, at minimum, get over this Astrabbit. Swole spends a lot of time in the tank here, and I think finally elects to PTA the Cedar Soar. Like, this is a position that you get to put your opponents in so often with this deck, is cards like PTA, cards like Shield of Achilles, they of course scale with the strength of the card that they are being cast against. So by doing this, Swole is putting himself in a position where he's about to take like 7. Here's a shield for the Morlith, and then we'll just walk over with the Asprowl and direct with the Cedar Sword, doing 2, and then requiring an additional 2 payout at the end of the turn to get rid of it, in a turn where we already have established a 7 for 2 drop on our side of the field. Importantly, we're both still on 4 cards as well. So Swole does have the resting. That's the immediate answer to the Asprowl, and then they're going to go for the Toxiri. Okay, getting the Dense Fog here is a little frightening. The Dense Fog, while the Toxiri is on the field, is not only, of course, great insofar as Dense Fog is strong against a significant amount of cards, but it's also a combat trick because it decreases the attack and defense of an Elestral. Here putting the Toxiri in defense because, of course, even with the -2, it can stand up to the Morlith. This is a tough turn to think through. Obviously, I want to do Tadflow, but probably not great into the face of that Dense Fog. So I think we're just going to go ahead and cast the Morlith again and hope for the best. With 15 cards still in deck, we've got a lot of really good hits at our disposal. We think about it for a long time, but after being in the tank, I think we are just going to commit to the guy. We'll go for the Morlith here and mill for a ton. Thankfully, we do hit another Cedar Soar. This is a really tough position to be in. I really want to get to this Blizzstrix in my hand, so we're actually going to cast the Cedar Soar in defense, even though this is a really weak play into a number of things. In so doing, I'm toying around with these spirits real quick. I think we do end up going Double Frost, despite the fact that it looks terrible because an Ascension into Blizzstrix is going to be useless if it's got 2 Terralis under it. We go into the battle phase, and that just like weasels out this copy of Dense Fog. Swole talks a little bit afterwards about this decision point. Could have just let the Toxiri die, which would have been pretty important because the next cast is a Werepup. This grabs a Lunar Phase Full Moon, and when a Lunar Phase Full Moon is cast, you can special send it into a Leica Void. So we are telegraphing the set card a little bit, which I think we proactively activate here. A position where we still also have Dense Fog would also allow us to theoretically get over like some of the powerful monsters that remain on the field, but as is, even ascending by Full Moon into a copy of Leica Void isn't going to get over the 6 defense Cedar Soar, which means that he is going to kind of be at the mercy of the Blizzstrix next turn, though it will be pretty much the last thing I cast, because being able to special ascend into the Leica Void after resolution of the Full Moon means that I'm going to take 2 on this crash into the Morlith, which of course is absolutely necessary because the Morlith represents a ton of damage over the existing board anyway. So getting over the Morlith here, taking the 2 out of us, I think we're just getting rid of the Terratlises here. Obviously, we don't have the Invoke Rune anyway. We will draw for turn. It's a Gloombat. All right, all in, baby. Let's go ahead and ascend over the Cedar Soar into a Blizzstrix. We'll try and activate the Blizzstrix effect. And thank goodness it's Dense Fog, but there's really no winning here. here. Activating Dense Fog puts them at 2, and then we walk over the Toxirian. There's really nothing that outs the on-field Blizzstrix. The other set card is Full Moon, which does nothing from this position. So Swole thinks that his best idea is to hope that I go for a 50-50 and miss, but unfortunately just targeting the monster puts him in a position where he actually just dies. So we'll think for a little bit about what we want to shuffle back in. The Cedar Sores are probably fine. From this position, there's not too much I want to see remaining. We don't have any Frost Spirits left in our Spirit deck, so putting back the Catarants, which is usually a pretty good position to be in, it does literally nothing. Let's just throw some stuff back into the deck that we don't want to draw or cast, get in, and deal 3 to Swole, putting him at 0 and ending the game. So we're back with the deck, and wow, that was explosive. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1, I spoke about the potential game plan decks that would inevitably wash over the face of 5s once the card pool expanded, and I can comfortably say we are here. The deck is so streamlined, it hurts. 2, you really get to blank almost the entirety of back row. If your opponent sets 1 card to play around Hurricane, well, you blow them out of the water. What does Shield do against a 3-drop and a 2-drop? If they play 2, you get to Gloombat them for their life savings. There's a no-win situation for your opponent. And 3, like Tearlament, even though you're gambling, you're kind of playing with house money. There are so many hits. And the cons. 1, it's bricky. One of the upsides to Snowmen was that it played Astrabbit and Morfrost and Pals. While you can still consider those cards, I think the playstyle of this deck demands you go all in as early as possible, which means you're really missing that consistency. 2 is that it's not very interactive. You're really disrespecting your opponent with a deck like this, so if their game plan goes over the top of yours, which is unlikely but possible, you are screwed. And 3, a lack of back row helps you always hit, but it also means you're never able to consistently deal with utility guys. As Lunar Aggro, for instance, plays more must answers, this might become an issue. There are, of course, different builds of this deck. You could start playing more Frosts with the newly released Scorpion. You could play more back row just to hedge against your opponent's game plan, but those are an exercise for the viewer, not for me. All in all, if only by virtue of being pretty easy to build, doesn't take a genius to play 3 copies of the Blizzstrix and the Asprowl, this looks like the first discovered pillar of a new Moonrise meta. Check it out in action this weekend on this channel.